And we are live right now. Thank you all for tuning in to the Let's Heal podcast, season 5. I've missed y'all. I'm gonna let some of y'all come in here. I'm sure most of y'all are probably either on your way home from work or trying to get settled in from work. So I'm not gonna wait for y'all to get here. Y'all know how I do. Anyway, we have a good show for you today. I have my guest, Quintin Dukes, today, and we will talk about toxic traits. We got a good show, so you don't want to miss it. Tune in, stay right where you are, and we will be right back. All right, y'all, we are back, and I promise y'all next Thursday, the plan is to have a new intro, but y'all know my life is full of stuff. I always got stuff going on. So, like I said before, today we're gonna be talking about toxic traits, and my guest today is Quintin Dukes. I first saw him on TikTok. And he's always got something to say on TikTok. I always love hearing what he has to say. He's always so calm with his words. So, I invited him on the show and to talk about toxic traits because he talks about a whole lot of stuff. But anyway, I'll let him introduce himself so that I don't miss anything important. So, Quintin, tell the people who you are, what you do, and all that
stuff. Welcome. My name is Quintin Dukes, like Tyrell said. Tyrell can't even talk today. It's been a long day. So Tyrell, what you stated before, yes. So yes, Quintin Dukes, TikToker. I work at the health department. Not too much going on. I do life coaching from here to there, so nothing too much.
Yeah. Hey Jazzy. So yeah, I decided to I was thinking about toxic traits. Quintin and I have had conversation before now, like we've chatted before. His conversation is usually really good. And y'all know over here at Let's Heal, I'm all about transparency. I'm very straightforward with my words and my information. And I felt like he was a perfect fit for this topic. So I invited him. So today we got a couple things that we're going to cover. And like in true Let's Heal fashion, it's all about love, life, and lessons. And if I say something that makes you feel a little uncomfortable, then I'm talking to you. Yes, Toya. Hey, yeah, you caught us live this time. I just started, so I hope you are able to tune and able to see. So y'all, please make sure you submit your questions and anything in the comments because I can see the questions. If you have a question for me or Quintin or anything like that throughout the show, please do that. And immediately after this, I will also be on the Extraordinary Unplugged on that channel. So as soon as I log out here, I'm jumping on something else. But anyway, we're going to jump right in. So toxic traits. Why did I pick toxic traits? Because I feel like at this point in time, there's a lot of people who are, I guess, getting into the dating or friendship kind of situation, after COVID. And I feel like there's a lot of people who carry toxic traits. I'm not going to touch on this. Yes, I am. It's right here. I'm looking at the list right now. I've been running into a lot of passive aggressive people, but we're not going to jump on that one first. We're going to jump on. I initially called it blaming, and Quintin threw it back at me and said, call it victimhood. So explain to me what that means and why you wanted to call it victimhood instead of blaming.
Well, the reason why I wanted to say victim, like victimhood, is because there are people that are out there who, when you're in a situation, I think the main thing is that you have to look at what role you play in it. And my grandmother, I think she says it best, is that everything that we do comes down to actions and consequences.
Right.
So we all play a role. And if you haven't reached a certain level of maturity and self-awareness, you are not going to be able to say, you know what, I played a role in that.
Right.
I was wrong for that. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so what that takes, it takes, like I said, a certain level of self-awareness, maturity, and a little bit of education, life experience when I say education.
Right.
And when you have all that together, you're not playing the victim. You know,
Right.
something you could easily say, okay, well, that person was at fault for it. But when you take a deep dive, you're like, okay, so what's really at the crux of this?
Exactly. And you also have to ask yourself, what did I do? In this case, it's narcissism. That's somebody who's narcissistic. They're always the victim of everything. And then it's like, okay, at what point do you say, like you said, I'm not the cause of this, but I saw when this was going left and I continued to stay. You know, that would have been your part in the situation, actually staying after seeing that it was going, you know, it was going left. So you can't you can't stay in a situation that you know you shouldn't be in and then cry victim when it starts giving you exactly what it's given.
Right.
So, you know, toxic people endlessly blame others and seem completely unable to own their own contribution to any problem. I would say, yeah, like you said, that's victimhood. And we're going to jump right into narcissism. So that's a part of narcissism, because you said narcissism on there, and that's kind of almost like a narcissistic person. I was married to a narcissistic person, and everything was my fault. Like everything. You know, if I questioned something, it was, I'm just not going to talk because I can't say anything right. And I'm like, I just asked the question, you know, what is that all about? And I later found out that it has something to do with the trauma and the issues that were never dealt with from the past that, you know, this person was still living through. What has have you ever experienced somebody narcissistic in?
Yeah, I have. I've dated a narcissist. And so this was the part that was amplified to me. You are extremely correct. You know, a lot of times, you know, there's trauma that is there, that is unhealed. And so I think through that trauma, what that individual is really looking for is a sense of identity, who they are. And so that's when you talk about narcissists, you're like, oh, well, if you think back, they tend to mirror you.
Right.
They mirror the good parts of you. So essentially, I heard this this quotation before, is like, if you're dealing with a narcissist, you're essentially falling in love with yourself, because they're mirroring, you know, the good parts of you. And so I think that's why it throws us for such a loop when, like you stated before, it was like as if you can't do anything right. You can't do anything right or whatever, and they're sourcing from you. And you're just like, what is going on? So I think just in that case, you know, I had to learn how to cut the narcissist at its, you know, at its source. Which is, you know, and it kind of sucks, but if you stop evolving within that space until you're able to get out of it, they have nothing else to feed off of because they can't be themselves. True. So they have to go somewhere else and source that part of their personality from someplace else, which could be a friend or something like that. But once you start to see that, you should be making your exit plan of how am I going to transition out of the relationship or friendship or capacity.
Yeah, and in my situation, it took me about a year. Okay, so the situation where I really truly knew that my ex-husband was a narcissist was we were having conversation. We were going back and forth for some time. And then, you know, it got to the point where I was so in tune with his emotions and mood swings that it just, one day I walked in the door and I was like, something's not right. I feel it. I see it. It's all in your body language. It's all over the place. So I asked, what's wrong? So of course, you know, he told me it was my fault that he wasn't able to live his dream and travel the world and things like that. And so, like you said before, have an exit plan. When that whole situation came about, I'm fast forward. I'm talking really fast because there was a lot that went on in that situation that I will elaborate on in, you know, once things are final and I can actually talk about the details of stuff. But fast forward a year later, I had already planned that because I had felt like with the kind of person that I am, I was left out in the middle of the street with nothing but a street light over my head, and I was standing there butt naked with no direction. Like I don't know where to go, what to do from here. So now I got to make an exit strategy, and it's crazy that you have to even get to that point to know that it's time to leave a narcissistic person. So we got some comments. Jazzy said you also have some friendships that are narcissistic traits, and they are. That's that, you know, that victim. You know, everybody's always doing something to them. Everybody's talking about them. Everybody's always backstabbing them. Everybody's, well, hell, if you wasn't supposed to be here, you weren't supposed to be here. And Toya said, does a narcissist ever change?
No.
In my experience, I've never
No.
noticed a narcissist change ever. And it's only because they always are looking for their next person to victimize or become a victim of. You know, when you are groomed to be a victim, that's all you know. And until you're aware that you are creating situations where you're the victim, you're not going to change.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a whole self-awareness.
I was gonna say that's a whole separate episode.
That's a whole nother
And I was gonna say to add on to that, you know, one thing I had to look at this as well. One thing that they will do if they leave the environment and then they come back to the environment or what have you, they will try to show you this new reformed version of themselves. And as you're if you're keen and you have a level of self-awareness about yourself, you'll sit there and you're having a conversation with them and you'll be like, that's parts of me.
Exactly.
You're like, that's parts of me. But they take it to an extreme and they love to be able to say, they love to demonize you, but then utilize those same traits and talk about how good someone else treated them.
And that's exactly them up. Jazzy said they never seem to go away. They contact you like nothing ever happened. And that's exactly how it is. It's crazy that people will do that. And you know, you try to call them on it, because with my ex-husband, I'm like, look, do you see what you're doing? And it was never, he never did anything wrong. He never said anything. And I'm like, well, shit, if you don't see it, neither do I. I got my own life to live. So anyway, next we're going to talk about passive aggression. And that's people who, Toya said Jazzy is right. So passive aggressive, I've crossed paths with some people who were like associates of mine. And that's usually somebody who says something and they mean it, but then they say, I was just playing.
I was just joking. Yeah, right. I was just joking. I can't stand that. That gets so
or they try to laugh it off. And I'm like, no, you meant that. That's how you feel. Own your feelings, you know? So passive aggressive. Tell me something about passive aggressive. Have you experienced somebody with passive aggressive? Do you have an example? How did you deal with it?
I have experienced that a lot, and I was a corporate America. But one example I'll bring up is when I was dating somebody, and I had to understand the pathology of how they were brought up. I think it was very much because I came from a background of poverty, and so they came from a background of privilege, and we're both men of color, and I realized that our points of view were a little bit different on certain things. And I hate to say this, but in my opinion, some of the conversation or some of his talking points were rooted in white supremacy. And so when he would talk about things, he used to love saying that if he wanted to cut the conversation, you know, we would get into it about like him saying something. I was like, oh, okay, so you're not joking about that. He was like, oh, yes, I am. And then once he was done with it, he would be like, end of discussion. And I'm just like,
not to cut you off.
Yeah, the end of discussion. I said, who does that? So I think they compound on top of each other with that passive aggression and then with that fake sense of superiority as well. That combination together, you're just like, oh, you are a trip.
Wow. That's a whole lot. Because when I tell you how I would have cut my eyes so sharp, he would have felt that until the following year. You'll cut me out to about the end of discussion.
Listen, I had to, me personally, I had to remove myself because I had told him, I was like, let me get my keys. Let me go because you about to take me back to a place that I don't want to go.
Because you about to get your ass whooped up in here today.
Pretty much.
Like, it's going to slap you. And I ain't going to have nothing to do with that. You called that. So, so that passive aggressive, because I've had conversations with friends. I've crossed paths and dated a couple of passive aggressive people, and they really don't do well around me because I'm like, no, you weren't playing. Now that you've said it, you've expressed it, and you followed it up with, I'm just playing. The life coach in me is going to make you elaborate on that. And we're not moving past this conversation until you elaborate, because you have to own your feelings. You need to own your feelings, own your words, and own, if I make you feel uncomfortable, then say something. Don't passive aggressive. I was just playing, I just be playing with you. No, you
But you want to
wasn't.
know what though? I think many people haven't even gotten that far in their thought
Right.
process.
Right.
Unfortunately, to be able to say, okay, so what is that like? What is this authentic feeling that I'm having that is like causing me to do this? Is it
Right.
jealousy, or
Yeah.
is it anger?
Yeah.
What is this issue?
Yeah. What's the topic? The topic today is toxic traits, Howard. The toxic traits. We are talking about toxic traits. So yeah, that passive aggressive will
It'll
piss
stress
me
you
off
out.
with a lot of people. You know what I'm saying? Like if you get to that point, what she said, and when you react, you're doing too much or you're over. Oh my,
Hmm.
I
So then
had
they're minimizing at that point.
yeah.
Yeah,
It's
they're
like,
minimizing.
and again, those are the kind of people you're already like, I don't even want to ask you anything. I don't even want to say anything. And that's bad when you get into a situation with somebody who is passive aggressive and refuses to say what they mean and mean what they say. So you usually tailor yourself and see me personally, when I start having to tailor myself to make somebody feel comfortable about their feelings,
Right.
I,
It becomes
I
an
tend to
issue.
back off. You know what I'm saying? I tend to back off because I'm like, here I am owning my feelings. I'm gonna always own them no matter how good or bad they are. The world is always good and bad. So you're gonna always get yeah. What do you say? Howard, toxic trait is my expertise. A lot of venom snakes out there walking on trees. There definitely are. And that's why we're talking about it right now. And hopefully we will have somebody, once we get done with all of this, we'll give some pointers and some tips on how to identify if you have these toxic traits, because I know my toxic trait, and I will talk about that later. And my toxic, I know I feel it. I can see it. Well, I'll tell you when it show up. The next topic we're going to talk about though is criticism. So I chose this one because there's a lot of people who feel like, giving somebody advice or something like that there's a difference between constructive criticism, because it's not what you say, it's how you say it when you're talking to somebody. But when you're criticizing somebody and then you follow it up with, that's just me, I just talk like that. So you an asshole on purpose and we just supposed to accept that?
I think it's an excuse. That's
Yeah,
what I tell people. It's an
yeah,
excuse for you to just be nasty.
yeah,
That's all that really is. It's people who have baggage, and it's misplaced baggage. They don't
yeah.
really know how to get rid of it. They don't know how to, do a deep dive on themselves and say, okay, so this is really my issue. Because it's a them issue. Now that one,
Right.
that's a them issue.
Definitely. And for those of y'all who have baggage that's not y'all's, I do have a podcast called Is This Baggage Even Mine? Because there's a lot of people carrying around baggage from family issues and that was instilled by parents or grandparents or past situations that have nothing to do with you, that cause you to be very critical of other people if they don't act like or look like or have what you have. So you criticize other people instead of accepting who they are. Toxic traits. Drugs is an addiction. That's not even a toxic trait, that's an addiction. So
Right.
um so yeah, being I like constructive criticism, but I'm also the kind of person who I always tell people, though, don't dish it if you can't take it. See, I'm the kind of
Right.
person you can have a conversation with, whether it's good or bad, and you'll probably get upset and get angry with me before I get angry with you, because I understand you're entitled to your feelings and emotions. I'm entitled to mine, but I want you to respect me, but tell me what you need to tell me. I'm not gonna ever tell you what you want to hear. I'm gonna tell you what you need to hear
Right.
when it comes to those kind of situations. So anyway, criticism. Anything else about criticism before we?
I think it just always goes back to self, honestly. You know what I mean? I think that have you ever sat in a room with someone who's giving criticism and you listen to that criticism and you're like, that has more to do with them.
Yeah,
And so
yeah,
I think that what I tell people is, you need to do just like a deep dive on yourself, and you need to be clear on what tools you have within your toolbox in order to navigate this here thing. And the thing about it for me is I'm very much into jargon as well. See, I don't
Yeah.
even like the constructive criticism or whatever. I just call it feedback. I'll be like, hey, can I
Right.
give you some
Feedback.
feedback on
Yeah.
this one? Because I know some people, when they hear constructive criticism, probably from past situations, whether it's in the workplace or family or
It
something
turns
like
into,
that, it's always
oh
tied
Lord.
to, right, because it's tied to some type of negative
Right.
connotation or what have you. So, yeah.
Yeah. So Howard said a person in a relationship using drugs, creating a toxic relationship. That is definitely a toxic trait. And then Toya, she had a perfect point. And we go in there. She said, I was raised in the church, so I did a lot of criticizing until I realized it was wrong. Now the church, folks, critical,
I was
critical.
gonna say
Everything is critical.
that's a whole nother
Yeah,
episode.
it's all about and not all churches, not all religions, not all that, but as far as my religious experience, every religious experience that I've had, it's not even about the Bible or the place of worship or the relationship with God. It's about the people. Like they have such toxic traits that if it don't look like, if it don't act like when I want to live with Buddhists for 2 years to figure out more about Buddhism and things like that, and why and what they were talking about, because I'm a learner. I'm a sponge. Even to this day, I like to learn. So I went to live with Buddhists for 2 years and started talking to my family and was, telling them things like that. And I said, well, I'm, living with Buddhists. And even one of my best friends, and I love him to this day, he's still my best friend. First thing he said was, oh no, come back to God. What? Like, what the fuck is that? Like, I'm just
Right.
trying to learn.
That's not
Right.
even supportive in any kind of way.
Exactly. And of course, anything outside of Christianity, if you talk about that, it's of the devil. So I'm like, but there's other religions, y'all. So yeah, the church is big on that. And Jazzy said toxic people. I think it goes back to some childhood trauma experiences that they incorporate into the relationship and friendships. And it does. And then Toya said full of judges. Yeah, the church is definitely full of judges. And that's why I don't go to church now. And I meet people and I always say, look, my relationship with God is my relationship with God. I don't believe in organized religion, and I'm not going to your church. So don't offer that. And we'll get along fine. As far as like the childhood trauma and experiences, the childhood trauma and experiences, I feel like have that go along to get along kind of feel. I don't want to disappoint my mom, so I got to do what she says. I don't want to tarnish the family name, so I got to make sure that I make a good impression. So when I do get my criticism, it reflects positively on the family name. And it's like, child, most of the time it's the family name that's running your name through the mud anyway. So the fuck? Anyway, manipulation. Oh, manipulation. I know a lot of manipulators. Somebody who's going to get you to do what they want you to do, how and when they want you to do it. Manipulation. Talk to me about manipulation.
Here's my thing on manipulation. I think you have to figure out exactly what form of manipulation they're using. Because I feel like everybody has a tool. So is it mental manipulation, emotional manipulation, intellectual manipulation, so on and so forth. And so I think once you figure it out, and what I've noticed is that when manipulation is going on between an adult and a child, it does scar the person,
Right.
especially well into their adulthood. But I think once they get to their adulthood, they're like, oh, wow, I didn't even realize I was being manipulated. And they
Right.
have to deal with that. Because I feel like in those cases, that's a form of rejection as well. Because you come to the place and understand that this person really did, like my own parent didn't appreciate my authentic self.
Right.
So they felt as though they had to manipulate me and try to mold me into being something else, something that was more palatable for them. And so once you get to that point and you break all that stuff down, I think in most cases you just have to separate yourself from the source of
So
that manipulative person.
So do you think it's also a control thing? I mean, it's a complete control
Oh
thing. So
yeah.
do you feel like parents are, because growing up, people will say, well, I have kids, and you hear it now, with parents, especially Black parents, you're gonna do as I say because I'm the parent. And it's like, okay, I understand that. You're taking care of your child, but to control your child creates a rebellious situation away from you. You know what I'm saying? You want your child to be able to protect themselves, respect you first as their parent, and respect their, not have to go through that whole really hard teenage, I hate my parent years, and then go back and start realizing, because like you said, you have to separate yourself from your parents most of the time, which is why a lot of people who have hard childhoods, they run away from their parents when they get to a certain point in their life, and they're like, oh my God, and then they, you get to the 13, 14, 15, where you don't want to be seen with your parents, where you hate your parents and everything that they stand for. And then eventually in your 20s, your late 20s, you're like, oh, I really appreciate my parents. So it's like, you have to be able to get away from that manipulation to understand who you really truly are in order to appreciate who they were trying to raise you to be. Because a lot of times, especially when it comes to from my experience in my family, a lot of the parents were young. I have a lot of young parents. Hell, my mom was 15 when I was born. So, young parents don't know how to raise children, because 9 times out of 10, they're children too. So, all you know is, if I'm going to protect you, I need to control you. It's like, look, stay right here. Instead of saying, if you go over there, somebody go snatch your crazy ass. So go if you want to.
Right. Well, I think another important part is that a lot of that stuff is passed down as well. One thing that I have definitely realized is that a lot of our parents who we think are highly dysfunctional, they're not dysfunctional by themselves. They didn't become dysfunctional in a vacuum. So this has been generation upon generation upon generation before we even got here. So you definitely have to take that into consideration. And I think what many of us are starting to realize is that I guess we're the cycle breakers or what have you. And so we are definitely kind of ushering in something different. But of course, it goes against the grain because of that whole, what is it, that saying, what happens here in this house stays in this house?
When I tell you, that's probably what the premise of Let's Heal began on, that whole secretive shit, because that's what tears people up. There are so many people walking around, like you said before, with baggage that's not theirs, with secrets that they should have talked about and told somebody else about. And even when somebody shares a secret inside the house, you as the parent and protector needs to be able to believe what your child is saying. Yep, she said, I hate that shit. I hate it too. Yes, it's like, what is the point of that? What goes in this? Because if look, if you got a whole lot of bullshit going on in the house, it's almost like somebody who is living in a house with somebody who is abusing everybody in the house. And you say, you don't tell nobody else. So you're expecting your child to stay in this dangerous environment and not say anything with an opportunity or to find some kind of proper help to get them to a safe point, because, anyway.
Well, I think the one thing that, because you said something, I think the one thing that you definitely have to understand though is that in those particular cases, it's not the fact that the parent doesn't care. I know some people would say that their parents didn't care. I don't think it's the fact that the parent doesn't care. I think it's the mere fact that the parent doesn't have any other tools.
Right. That, and they also probably are dependent on the situation in order to make sure that you can survive. A lot of times people are put in situations that, like I always tell people, when somebody say, well, just get out of that situation, until you actually live.
That's not always possible.
Exactly. And until you've lived that, where it's easier said than done kind of situation, you're not going to understand it. And you will always be able to say, oh, just get out of that situation. What did Toya say? It's abuse in itself to say that. And it is. But a lot of times, if you are in that situation, it's almost like, before COVID and the pandemic, and where it was, now it's easy to get a job. You go on one day, you say, I don't like this job, and have you another job tomorrow. But before that, you have people who were stuck in jobs, and I'm using this as a very surface toxic situation because it goes a whole lot deeper. I'm gonna let y'all use your own imagination about how deep it goes, and you tell somebody to get out of the situation. I'll use, that as an example. People say, well, you don't like your job, just get out of it. At that point in time, it wasn't that easy. You know what I'm saying? You can't just go and apply for a job and they call you the next day and you got a new job next week. It's not that easy. And like I said before, that's a surface situation. I'll let y'all go into your own depth with that, when it comes to certain situations where people say, well, just get out of it. It's not always that easy, y'all. Speaking from experience, it's not always that easy.
Nope, it's not.
Where we at? Negativity. Woo-hoo. What I call leeches of life, like somebody who come to you and they plug into you and they just want to suck all the energy. What she said, I never said that to my kids. What if you need to tell something that happens to you? Secrets definitely kill because they are definitely stressful. And not only do they kill the adults physically, but there's a lot of children who are killing themselves, like committing suicide because that whole you don't go, like the boy who just a couple months ago, whose family was abusing him and making him record things on camera about him being gay. That was abuse. They're abusing this boy, putting them on, what I'm saying? And I'm like, and in my mind I'm thinking, how many other times has this happened? And his brothers, his sisters, his mama told him, you better not tell nobody nothing. Or they'll blame them and say, well, if you tell somebody that's going on, they're going to take you away from me. You want them to take you away from me? Mm-hmm. I've seen that before. And I'm like, well, wait. So you're telling your child to stay in this house, continue to be abused, or negative people equals killjoys. And they do. Like somebody who just does not, they come into, when they walk into the room, it's heavy.
Yeah, so it's a shift of energy. I'll go off of that example that you brought up, because there's always an established dynamic, and that's the thing. And so when you have that one person that comes in, it's just like a shift. I know what you're talking about. It's definitely a shift, and it brings the mood down. And it's so crazy because I think maybe last year, that's when I became like really, really into like energy transference. Yeah. And you just kind of see how negative someone can be, and it's just their aura and how they come into your space, and then they just like change it, From a psychological level, honestly, when people are in a negative place, I think it's because they don't really feel like themselves, like with this whole self-concept or whatever. And it could be also some tension between self-concept and self-actualization as well. They may feel like they are who they are and they're okay with it, but people in their environment may say, oh, I don't see you like that. This is how I see you. And it may be the complete opposite of who they think they are.
Exactly. And Toya just said a shift the second they show up. And or how about this one? If somebody mentions their name, the energy shifts. You know what I'm saying? Like I've had some people who are just completely negative, and they come into a situation and it's almost like, oh, did y'all invite them?
Yeah. You have or they bring the drama or something like that.
Oh God. Yeah. Now, speaking from personal experience, the Black gays love drama. Yeah. And that's why I'm usually by myself, because I like to live my life. I always tell people I'm at the corner of peace and happiness in my life. And I refuse to let you, and I'm having a block party, and I refuse to let you come and fuck up my block party with your negativity. I'm over here with my red cup, my potato salad, and my baked beans, and here you come with a goddamn storm cloud. You can't stay. You can't come. You're not invited. So, and a lot of times,
you want to know what though? To that point, the thing that amazes me is that some people don't understand. They're like, you think I'm full of drama? Like, what do you mean? And I see that a lot in our community, and I'm like, I would love to go someplace, honestly, and not have to deal with the tea nor the shade. Okay. Yeah. I would love to go. I don't want to deal with that. I'm sorry. I just don't. I'm not qualified for that.
I ain't gonna deal with it. Yeah, Toya said I love that. Yeah, I don't deal with it either. That's why I always tell people, and that's my philosophy. Just over the last year and a half, 2 years, I'm like, you know what, my life is a big old block party right now. When you think of an old school block party, y'all, the girls and even the girls and the boys from my neighborhood out there playing double dutch. You got your uncles and them playing cards. You got your grandmama over looking at everything and make sure everybody good. You got the barbecue going. I'm at the corner of peace and happiness, and you cannot come to this block party if you come to fuck up the energy. You can't stay. So because you always have that one cousin that come and everything shift, and it's like, oh hell, who invited you? No,
right. Yeah, it's
you
always
can't.
at least one.
So no, yeah. I always tell people get to your life where you're at the corner of peace and happiness, and have your block party. When you walk in the room, your energy should be able to lift up the room and make people excited about you being there. Hell, even if they don't really like you. And I always tell people, you may not like me, but because I care and I respect myself enough, even if you don't like me, when I walk in the room, you ain't got no choice but to respect me. Because I've done nothing but drink my water and mind my own bald-headed business with my melanated chocolate skin. So, hey, it is what it is.
Right. Well, I think everybody deserves respect unless you're doing something that's so out of order. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
See, Toya said, here comes this bitch. That's exactly like, damn, who invited her? Why y'all didn't tell her a different time?
Right.
So, yeah, it's that negativity. And I think like even now, like I always tell people, negativity, like peace and happiness is not about always being positive, because positive and negatives are opposite. It's not negativity is not opposite of your happiness. You know, your happiness is your responsibility. But you got a lot of people whose happiness entails them being a negative person. So that's not the same thing, you know. And I talk to my mom and she's always like, well, you can't be about let's heal and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, I'm all about happiness. Positivity and negativity is two, those are the opposites, positive and negative. That's when you put those together. I choose to be positive with my happiness. That means that I'm not going through my life to step on people to create happiness. My happiness is my responsibility. So when I meet somebody who is projecting negativity, the peace and happiness in me is always going to say, what happened to you? I'm always like, can I get you here? I need to bring you on this island of positivity and give you the details of how to create you a block party, because something ain't right with you.
Right. Yeah.
Maybe
everybody's not able to get there.
Right. Maybe that's the life coach in me. And the more I tune in or tap into my purpose on this earth, the more I'm able to see people instead of running away from them. I'm always like, come sit next to me. I feel like I'm a damn oracle sometimes. I'm like, come on, sit next to me. Something ain't right with you. What's going on with you? Oh my God. So anyway, we're gonna move on. Emotional blackmail.
Oh God.
What were your thoughts when you saw when I sent you that? What was your first thought when you saw the emotional blackmail?
My first thought was just emotional manipulation.
Okay.
Honestly. You know, I've seen people. Have I ever had that done to me before? I feel like I have in like maybe past relationships or something like that. You know, where someone does something, they're kind of like the reason why you're in the conflict. And then here comes the waterworks and stuff like that, and you're looking and you're reflecting and you're like, you're not the victim in this, so
Right.
why are you crying? What is wrong with you? You know, like you're really the aggressor in this whole situation. So yeah, I mean, emotional blackmail, that's what I think.
Yeah, and emotional blackmail is almost like somebody who it's a gossipy person. When I thought about emotional blackmail, I was like, this is somebody who gossips and does not like to see other people genuinely happy. So it's always, let me find something out about you to blow up your spot when you show up too happy. You know what I'm saying? How are you so happy all the time when you broke? You know, something like that.
So you don't think that's more so like sabotage?
Who?
Sabotage?
That could be, but
Yeah.
that also like it could be somebody who is, you know, ain't emotions a good thing. They are, and I'm aware of them. It would definitely be it would be sabotage, and it would be emotional blackmail because but my philosophy even on that, oh yeah, I don't think men show enough emotion yet, because all men know is stone face and work hard. Black men, yeah. As far as like the sabotage and the blackmail goes, it's always like when you find somebody, I always tell people, don't allow somebody else to tell your story.
Right.
So then that way, when somebody is in the streets talking about you, or there's a rumor that goes around about you, it's like, oh, I already talked about that. Because those are the people who are trying to come and blackmail you with the information that they just heard. Oh, let me tell you what I heard. I really don't give a damn what you heard, because unless it came from me, which it probably will come from me first, I really don't care. You know, and we all to an extent are like, oh, I wonder what people are saying about me. And then it's like, yeah, maybe not.
Yeah.
You have people around you who are like, they have that emotional blackmail. And I have an associate who is like that. Like, he comes and I already know as soon as I pick up the phone, it turns into, well, let me tell you, somebody who's gossiping. It's gossiping, it's sabotage, it's emotional blackmail. And, you know, these people that he's telling me about, I'm like, you know, I don't really, and I think it's also phishing too, because if he's telling me stuff, he's waiting for my response to the story about somebody else so that he can run back to that person and tell them, well, you know, Tyrell said. So being able to identify that emotional blackmail, phishing, sabotage, all of that is all there. And if you don't, you know, learn how to identify it, number one, you got to be able to identify it, and you got to be able to be ahead of it. Like, our conversations, they real dry. Like, and that as soon as I see his number, I'm always picking the phone, and the conversation is real on my part. I'm always like, right. You're right. So whatever you say is right. Yeah, what she said, I don't care what people say. I'm an open book. I'm at a block party. Yes, we're at a block party with the red cup, where people don't know what's in that cup, but whatever it is, you know, it makes me feel good. So yeah. So that's emotional blackmail. We're gonna talk about one more thing, and then we're gonna give some suggestions, because we're 41 minutes in.
Right, time flies.
Right, projection. You mentioned projection, so tell me about projection.
Well, that's when someone just has baggage and they want you to feel guilty about the baggage or internal issue that they're dealing with. So they want to make it a you problem when it's really a them problem.
Right. They come in, they bring their stuff to you. Or there are people who say, well, let me tell you what's going on. And see, my response to that is always, that's how people stop calling me with problems, because I'm always like, so what's your suggestion to solve that? Because even in like the work environment, I always tell people, don't ever present a problem without a suggestion of a solution. Don't wait for me to come to you and solve your problem, because I got my own shit to worry about. You know, so don't project that on me. Leave that with me, and then you check up with me a week later. Well, did you come up with anything? No, that's your shit.
Well, I think too, the other issue with that is that you'll find yourself being more invested in the situation. If you do fall for the okie doke, you're more invested than they are. You're like, why are you so like reactive to this? Like, there's no movement on your end whatsoever. Like, what is going on with you? So, yeah.
Yeah, you are so right. You are so right. You are so right. So, with all of those things, what would you give as advice? Well, before we go into that, do you have a toxic trait?
Do I have a toxic trait?
What would be your toxic trait if you have one?
Oh, that is really, really good. If I have a toxic, I mean, because everybody has them.
Everybody's got it.
Yeah, yeah. I'm like, because, you know, sometimes I have conversations with myself, and I'm just like, well, you know, how you feeling today? What's going on?
Right.
I think one of my toxic traits that I definitely had to work on, and I think I made a video about this on TikTok, so I talk about the pathology of it, was having an unhealthy understanding of what competition was.
Okay.
And the pathology to that was the fact that when my mom and my dad got a divorce, he remarried, and the woman that he remarried had a son as well. So, you know, they came into it, and I could clearly see the change. Like, they became his priority. Yeah. And so a lot of times we were kind of, I want to say, subconsciously pitted against each other and compared. And so I felt as though, even at a very young age, I felt as though I needed to one up him. You know, as I've gotten older, I'm like, that's ridiculous. Like, don't even do that. Like, this is very much a one-sided competition. But Yeah, when I was a young child into like preteens, yeah, that was
Wow.
that was it.
Wow, wow, that's crazy. Because I think a lot of people do that. You know, when they're, especially if they're older. Like me, I was raised around a bunch of kids. Like my first cousin was born on the exact same day a year after I was born. So I always tell people I've never been able to have anybody to myself. You know, as family, my mom, my dad, my grandparents, nobody. So, and then after that, they just kept on coming. So I'm like, it's too many of y'all to compete with. So I'm just gonna be me in my own chocolate self. So.
I feel like that was a good attitude and a good approach to it.
But that also led to my toxic trait. My toxic trait is nonchalantness. I really don't give a fuck about a lot of stuff, a lot of things, and even in like relationships. You know, one of my friends, like my mom, you know, she used to tell me when I was little, she said, "You just don't let anything, you just don't care about nothing." And it's like it's not that I don't care. I just don't let it bother me. And even now to this day, like I'll date people and I'm just like, whatever, you know, or I haven't talked to whatever. And my friend said it just comes off as completely uninterested. And I'm like, yeah, I can definitely see that. But I'm also a communicator. I mean, I see it when it shows up, but I also feel it when it shows up. And me being nonchalant and real, I don't give a fuck. It's like, yeah, whatever.
So are you clear as to like the pathology of it?
You know what? I think a lot of mine comes from growing up and like seeing people around me stressed out about stuff that they couldn't control. Like my mom was always yelling. I'm like, girl, why are you yelling? Can you change that right now? Like my mom, I remember one time, one particular incident. Me, my mom, my sister were in a grocery. I think it was like we were in Burlington. And of course the line was way down the aisle. And my mom is huffing and puffing. These lines are so motherfucking long. And I'm like, so all of this huffing and puffing that's stressing you out. Did the line move any faster? Have you gone anywhere further than there she go right there. Watch your mouth. That's my mama right there. Watch your mouth. And it got to that point where it was like, okay, so if you huffing and puffing, yelling, talking about something is not changing or affecting you right now, why?
So I have another question. So what's your birth order? Are you the oldest, youngest?
I'm the oldest. I'm the oldest child and the oldest grandchild.
I feel like we tend to have, because I'm the oldest too, I feel like we tend to have like that nonchalant whatever. Like if it's something that we can't control or whatever.
Yeah. I really have like, even as I get older, like I'll be 40 years old this year, and my don't give a fuck has been turned way up. Like I'm like, yeah, I don't give a fuck. I don't care.
Yeah, well, as the oldest, I mean, honestly, I think a lot of parents fail to realize, you know, as the oldest child, a lot of times the decisions that we had to make, we didn't get a chance to really talk about emotions. Like we didn't get a chance to consider them either. So
Right?
it
It was
was
like,
like you just gotta do this. Like you just gotta you're the first one out. You know what I mean? A lot of times parents had their children when they were younger. So in a way you grew up with your parent. Like you just sometimes the parent wasn't emotionally available. You know what I mean?
My mom said she had to learn patience because mom was young. You know, she was a kid raising a kid. She was a kid raising kids because it was two of us, you know, at a young age. And then my brother came. So it was like we all had to learn. Yes, yeah, it's like, and as you get older, Jesse said his older brother's like that. As you get older, you start looking, you start paying attention. It's like, it's really not that serious, y'all. It's not that serious. Usually the baby of the family is the one that freaks out the most. And the baby that I think of when I said that would be Tamar Braxton, because she's always freaking out. And I'm like, girl, it's really not that serious. And Tony Braxton is a really I don't give a fuck kind of person. See, look at that.
Because we don't have room for that. We essentially grew up with the parent. We learned lessons. The parent was learning lessons.
We all learn, like, okay, are you because I ask people that in a minute, and it really pisses people off when they interact with me, because I'm always like, so even at work, you know, because I work for the public transportation, people get on the bus, blah, 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 and I'm looking like, did you get it all out?
Right.
All right, have a seat. I really sit down. I don't care. So, you know, and they expect that. Jazzy said, I'm the youngest. So that means you are a brat, Jazzy. If nobody's ever talked to you, you're a brat. You flip out like Tamar Braxton. Well, she said, yes, I'm very young and I did have to learn how to be a mom in a teenage mind. Yeah. A lot of that comes with maturity and paying attention and lessons. And, I appreciate everything that I've learned, you know what I'm saying, in the process of growing up with my mom, just learning things about life that I can apply to myself and create something like Let's Heal, where it's all about love, life, and lessons. Because that's what life is. It's all about love, life, and lessons. But before we go into the final, because time is fly.
Yeah, it is.
But I'm great now. Yes, you are, Mom. You're great. You're great. So for those of you who did not see my promo before, I got my Let's Heal breast cancer awareness t-shirts, my bracelets, my pink bracelets, and I also have a pink sweatshirt. It's all folded up. It's a sweatshirt that is being raffled off for Breast Cancer Awareness Month. It is, it's all on the website. As a matter of fact, let me put it in the link here. You can donate to it, and you'll be entered into the drawing to win a bracelet, a t-shirt, and the sweatshirt for Let's Heal. And let me put that in here. And while I'm putting that in here, Quintin, I want you to tell me, what is your definition of healing?
Oh, this is a good one. So, this is my definition of healing. I feel like one can heal once they have become aware of whatever the particular situation is, understand the pathology, where did it start, and who does it involve? And when I say who does it involve, I'm not talking about, I'm going to point the finger and I want you to be accountable and all this other stuff. Because I think people fail to realize you can do your healing on your own.
Yeah.
You don't need that other person, because a lot of times when you have that other person, you want that validation and you're feeding into that ego. No, take a step back, understand what the issue is, where it started, and then also at that point, figure out how you can effectively deal with it. A lot of times people, and I guess this is a clue when you are healing, is that a lot of times we need to sit and have a conversation with our inner child.
Right.
To be able to say, okay, so where did I leave you?
Right.
Understand that that's your responsibility. Your responsibility as a person is to talk to that inner child and be like, how can I help you, bring you along? Because you got stunted somewhere, somehow. I don't know if it was at age 8 when this happened, or was it age 15 when this happened, or what have you. And I mean, we're like coaches, but I always tell people, listen, go get you a little bit of therapy. We all need it, So get you a little bit of therapy and understand that. So I think that all together is healing. It's just it's not a straight line. It's a squiggly line. But you'll get there.
It's definitely a journey. It's a journey.
Yes.
And then after you talk to a therapy, then come over and talk to me, your life coach, who can help you move forward positively and find you a corner of peace and happiness so we can figure out what your block party look like. But in the meantime, Quintin, tell everybody where they can find you at and all, because like I said, I found them on TikTok. I was scrolling through and found them. And tell them where they can find you at.
Well, you can follow me on TikTok. My username is Mr. Intellectual 2025. And then I'm on Meetup.
You put that in the comments if you see your comments on that side.
Okay, I would definitely do that. And then I gotta figure out how to do that, but I got you. And then I also run these meetup groups. It's called what is it? The Cultural Competency Corner, where we discuss cultural competency. Is under Confident Stride. So those are the two places you can follow me if you're interested in my work. And
Confident Stride, is that a website or an app?
No, it's actually a meetup. I was able to network with someone, and she's trying to optimize meetup groups and things like that. So I was like, oh, it's pretty cool. Yeah.
Awesome. So like I said before, everybody, he will put that information in the comments. And I have enjoyed this podcast today, y'all. So please make sure you share this video. Make sure you click on the podcast. It will be available on audio on most platforms by midnight. And today was fun. It was a great conversation, Jazz. It was really, really fun. Quintin, I appreciate you and thank you for coming on. Everybody else, I will see y'all. When am I gonna see y'all? When am I gonna see y'all? Next week? No, week after next. Because I've decided for season 5, I'm gonna do every other week. So y'all please tune in to every other week, because my life is all over the place right now, but I don't want to forget y'all. Until next time, see y'all later. Quinn, stay right there. Everybody else, goodbye.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone.